My name is Noah. I am 12 years old, and last spring, my father and stepmother left for Florida for almost a month, leaving me alone in our house with $50 and a note taped to the fridge. The note was written quickly, like something you leave when you don't want to think too much about what you're doing. "You're grown enough, not a little kid anymore. We'll be in touch." They loved that word, grown. It sounded responsible. It sounded reassuring. Mostly, it made responsibility disappear. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, holding the money in my hands. It wasn't money to live on. It wasn't even money meant to last. It felt more like a pause, a short silence between the moment you realize you've been left behind and the moment someone else finally notices. I told myself out loud that I would manage, that everything would be fine, that this was just a test of independence. The house listened and said nothing back. The first few days, I was careful in a way only hungry people are careful. I ate smaller portions, counted every meal, tried to save half of whatever I touched for later. I kept opening the fridge even when I knew nothing new would appear inside. By the fourth day, it became obvious that the money would run out long before my parents came back. By the sixth day, the food ran out first. When the fridge was finally empty, I stood there with the door open, staring at the white shelves while the light stayed on, glowing uselessly, as if something should have been there. There was nothing. That night, I went to bed hungry. The next morning, I woke up the same way. That was when I understood something simple and terrifying. Waiting meant disappearing. I stopped waiting. I started looking for work. After school, instead of going straight home, I walked the surrounding streets, looking into windows, reading signs, paying attention to places adults usually ignored. That's how I found the small corner store, narrow aisles, old shelves, a bell over the door that rang too loudly every time someone came in. The owner was an older man who watched me carefully, but didn't ask many questions. I told him I could help stock shelves after school. He looked at my face, then at my hands, then back at my face. He said he didn't pay much. I told him that was fine. It wasn't pride, it was necessity. I worked there for several days, moving boxes, lining up cans, wiping the floor at closing time. My body felt lighter every day, weaker, but I didn't complain. What I earned was enough for exactly 2 cups of instant noodles a day, no more. I learned that number quickly. 2. 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening. Hot water, salty powder, soft noodles that filled my stomach just long enough to make the pain quiet down. They didn't feed me. They postponed the damage. One afternoon, while I was crouched down stocking the lowest shelf, I heard my name spoken in a voice I knew too well. "Noah?" I looked up and saw my homeroom teacher, Mr. Wilson, standing in the aisle. He wasn't looking at the shelves or the prices. He was looking directly at me. He asked what I was doing there. I didn't answer. He asked why I was working. I didn't think. I didn't decide. My body stood up and ran. The bell above the door rang sharply as I pushed outside, and I didn't look back. I ran like the truth could physically grab me if I slowed down. The next day after school, someone knocked on the front door of our house. I stood on the other side, perfectly still, hoping that if I didn't move, the knock would stop. It didn't. When I finally opened the door, Mr. Wilson was standing there. He stepped inside, and the house told its story immediately. The empty kitchen, the noodle cups in the trash, the air that felt unused, untouched. He asked where my parents were. I told him. He asked how long. I answered. He sat down, and in that moment, the conversation stopped being polite. Everything after that happened faster than I could process. Phone calls, social services, a neighbor who brought groceries and looked at me like I was smaller than I should have been. I remember real food sitting on the table and feeling almost afraid to touch it. And then the pain hit harder than before. The hospital came next. I had ignored the burning in my stomach for days until it bent me in half. The doctor's voice was calm when he said the diagnosis, acute gastritis caused by prolonged malnutrition and improper diet. He asked how long I'd been eating like that. I said almost 2 weeks. He nodded. He didn't need to explain anything else. When my parents and stepmother returned, they weren't allowed to go home. A report was already waiting for them. Under U.S. law, leaving a minor without supervision or basic necessities is defined as child neglect. There was an investigation, there were fines, mandatory parenting responsibility courses, temporary loss of full custody rights, all of it written in clear, unemotional language. When they were finally allowed to see me, I was lying in a hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. They came in together. My father looked exhausted, older, like someone who had just discovered consequences for the first time. My stepmother stopped near the door, holding her bag too tightly. My father started to speak, then stopped. He said they didn't think it would be like this. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "we were wrong," just, "we didn't think." My stepmother said they believed I could handle it, that I was responsible, that they left money. I told her what that money bought: 2 cups of noodles and gastritis. She flinched like the word hurt her physically. My father sat down and finally looked at me. He apologized, quietly. I told him it wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. They didn't argue. After a long silence, he said they didn't lose custody for no reason, that everything had been explained to them more than once. He said they deserved it. That was the first sentence without excuses. When they left, the room went quiet again, but this silence was different. It wasn't empty. It didn't erase me. The social worker explained that the court's decision would remain in place and that my parents would have to prove, through actions, not promises, that they could be trusted again. I listened carefully. I nodded, because I understood something I hadn't before. Sometimes punishment isn't jail or fines. Sometimes it's realizing your child no longer believes your words and knowing that earning that trust back is the hardest work you will ever do.